Nigel Farage, he's never far away from me, as you know. Nigel Farage says Starmer is Blair without the flair. I laughed this morning when I read that because I thought it's a great headline.
Well, I would agree entirely. I don't think it's that relevant, though. I mean, it's the substance that matters and not the presentation. So although I agree...
think presentation does matter.
No, I actually think when it comes to politics, it really is the substance. I'd rather have somebody who gets things right who's very dull than somebody who's got lots of flair who gets most things wrong.
I mean, I hear you, but I also disagree, because I think we're so used to Prime Minister's questions being an absolute snooze fest, except when it's Angela Rayner and Oliver Dowden, and then it's just exciting, and people are like, oh, actually, there was some barbs exchange. And similarly, when it was Prescott and William Hague, there's a excitement and an energy brought to our politics. I think I agree, we do need to focus a lot more on the substance and the issues, but you can do it in a presentationally entertaining way, rather than a snooze fest, which a lot of it is.
Yeah, but Starmer doesn't do that, so he is Blair without the flair, because Blair was a good parliamentary
I mean, it's a great line from Nigel Farage.
Yeah. Farage is very good at putting those kind of lines
and
out.
I would argue that actually Farage is an amazing orator, and obviously I've been on stage with him many times, and he has the audience in the palm of his hand, and it's an extraordinary gift that he has. And if you have detail as well, and I think you're right, but it's also because we're now in this 24-hour media cycle where you expect people to perform, and people also level the accusation at Rishi Sunak. He's just not very good when it comes to performing in front of cameras.
I think that's true. I think that there's very few politicians who I can think of off the top of my head who had that kind of touch of being able to connect with the audience and be able to just tune in when you're watching telly and think, OK, wow, they've got this. I think Blair's definitely one of them. Bill Clinton, I think also Boris Johnson probably engaged quite a lot of people.
Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Yeah, less so. I think Donald Trump even, controversially.
That's an interesting one there. Rees-Mogg, you see.
He's a character.
He's a character. And that's the difference. He's a character, isn't he?
He is a character, but I would say he's very good at making speeches, along with Dan Hannan. Now, they're not populist speeches. They're not going to be clipped for YouTube, but if you watch their 8 minutes, they're very good at speaking. Along with Desmond Swayne,
But you see,
example.
that's very interesting about being a character. Margaret Thatcher was a character.
Yeah.
And she obviously enjoyed great popularity. Boris Johnson was a character as well.
Yeah. I think, you know, Nigel's definitely a character as well. I think Nicola Sturgeon as well, like her or loathe her, she was a character, and she was... People listened to what she had to say, even if it was to disagree with a lot of what she had to say.
Well, I mean, it's just interesting. Keir Starmer talking about changed Labour. Tony Blair spoke about new Labour. This is Farage saying that actually, if you look, it's carbon copy. The shirt, the rolled-up shirt, is absolutely identical. Very quickly, Theresa May believes her election woes, and we remember them very vividly, show there is hope for Sunak to defy the polls. Yes, this is the former Prime Minister. She says that all is not lost at the moment, and Rishi Sunak can turn this around, can he?
No.
Right.
By her own logic, doesn't that mean getting rid of him and installing a more popular leader, i.e. Boris, when they got rid of her when she led the party to single digits?
Well, she also goes on to say that the view on the doorstep here is very different from 1997, so reiterating the view here from Nigel Farage, saying that actually, I think this is right. Whilst Labour is miles ahead, I looked at the latest polling yesterday, Conservatives on 20% up 2, Labour down 1, but still on 47%, Reform UK third at 11% down 2. So I still don't believe Labour has this in the bag.
I think you speak to any person in Labour and no one is complacent. No one thinks that going into the election they're going to have this kind of poll lead. Everyone thinks there's going to be a squeeze at some point, but also the Conservatives aren't really delivering anything, and they're not really putting up much of a fight. You're seeing these record numbers of Conservative MPs just quitting before the next election because they don't fancy the fight either.
The numbers are extraordinary. We're still not at the record levels, but we're not far off it. What are you hearing in terms of the Conservatives? Is it sort of pack up and head for the hills? It's end of term.
Well, I think so. I don't really have much to say about that because I don't really speak to Conservatives on a regular basis, but the student ones that I do are not too pleased with the Conservative Party. None of them like the direction, and they don't think that the leadership is doing a particularly good job. Rishi Sunak's just so wooden, along with Keir Starmer. He might even be more wooden.
I mean, you're right. In fact, watching those two, it's like watching paint dry.
Yeah, I'd probably rather watch paint dry.
And I'd rather watch paint dry.